Hey there, welcome to a cozy little reading vlog. I am going to take you with me through a week. I'm going to show you what I read in the week, how much I read in the week, what books I read, if they're good, if you should read them. Yeah, we're going to get into it and it's going to be a great time. I'm very excited for you to join me. So I'm ready to start a new book. I'm actually in the middle of, I think, 5 books right now. And you might be thinking to yourself, Belle, like, that's more than enough books. But no, it is not. Let me explain, okay? So right now I am reading The Wonderland Trials by Sarah Ella, but I'm doing it audio. So I don't do that all the time, you know? You don't listen to an audiobook all the time, and it's not as good as just reading a book. I mean, it is, but it's not. So I'm listening to that right now. I'm also reading 2 books that I consider like bedtime books. I'm reading, what is it? I gotta go figure out what that is. I don't even know what it's called. I'm back. Okay, so I am reading The Missing Golden Ticket and Other Splendiferous Stories by Roald Dahl. It is kind of just like random things, random bits of his writing, a missing chapter from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, all that good stuff. But it's not really a book. I just want to sit down and read it. Like, I could read this book in like an hour, but I don't know. So I'm kind of going through it really slow. I'm also reading, that was really loud. I'm rereading The Little Woman movie novelization from 1994. You may be thinking, why the heck would you read that? Because you could just watch the movie. I grew up on this. I read this so much when I was like a little kid that like rereading it, it's so fun. It's so wholesome and so weird, but I love it. I'm also reading a book for school, and I'm reading a big book of essays, and I'm annotating it for fun, for pleasure. So yeah, I need to pick a book because I'm not really reading a fun book right now. I finished one yesterday. We need another one ASAP. So I'm going to show you what I have. I'm going to pick what I think I'm feeling like reading. So the first book I have right now is The Scandalous Sisterhood of Prickwillow Place by Julie Berry. From what I understand, it is a Victorian boarding school murder mystery, which sounds fun, but honestly, I really don't read murder mysteries at all. But it sounded good in dark academia, so that's definitely something I might read today. I don't know. It's kind of spooky looking. I mean, it is a murder mystery. Yeah, it's 2 murders. Crazy. The next 2 books I have are summer books, which is funny because it's January. But sometimes you just find yourself craving a summer book in the winter, you know? This first one is The Forget-Me-Not Summer by Leila Howland. I started it at the library. And it's like a cute story about 3 sisters. They live in LA and then they have to go to Cape Cod, visit their grandma. And it just sounds like a good time. It sounds like the kind of book that I wish The Summer I Turned Pretty was. Yeah. Also, another summer book called The Callahan Cousins, Summer Begins, and it's about cousins who go to visit their grandma on, is it Cape Cod? I think it's an island. They're visiting their grandma on an island. So kind of similar plot to The Forget-Me-Not Summer, but they're sailing and it just looks so good. I'm really into like New England summery books right now. It's just a phase, I guess. The next book, I think it's also set in summer. Yep, probably. Which is The Fresh New Face of Griselda by Jennifer Torres. It's about this girl who likes beautiful things. She likes teacups with first ladies' faces on it. Like, that is so me. I can't even, that's amazing. And they end up living with, her and her sister living with their grandparents while they're having family troubles. It sounds sweet and fun and cozy. It sounds like a good time. That one I think I'm going to put in my pile of like probably read today. Let's make a little stack. The next book would be a reread, but I love this book. I don't know how to describe it well, but it's probably one of my favorite historical fiction books, and that is Genevieve's War by Patricia Riley Giff. This book is like the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society if it was set in France and about a 13-year-old girl. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you? But this book is so good, and I really love it. I've been wanting to reread it, so I'm very excited to. And might reread it today, but I don't know. I'm conflicted. I'm really conflicted. I have so many good books out right now. The next one will be a classic, and I have been wanting to read this book for so long. Oh my goodness. I read half of it a couple years ago. It's time. It's time to read it again. And that is Emma by Jane Austen. This book goes without saying. I don't have to tell you what this is about. Or do I? Do I? It's about Emma Woodhouse, who is a matchmaker, but she was happy being single. Of course, until things start changing and people come into her life and drama happens. It's a good time from what I understand and from the parts that I've already read. Then the final book is a book I'm terrified of. I'm not terrified, but I'm scared about it because I don't know, there's a thing to me when you try to write something based on a classic book, it can either go really well or really terrible, especially when you change things about certain characters. And this book is about a character in one of my favorite books of all time. This book is Marilla of Green Gables by Sarah McCoy. It is essentially the story of Marilla Cuthbert before Anne and like her time, what life was like for her, and her relationship with John Blythe and all that stuff. So it sounds really fun, but at the same time, it could be terrible. And I love Ellen Montgomery. I read a lot of Ellen Montgomery. And if the writing doesn't live up to it, it's gonna be a make or break. Because Ellen Montgomery is known for her description. So, that being said, I have to pick what book I'm going to read or start reading today. And I will get back to you when I decide. Okay, I've made my decision. I'm gonna start Marilla of Green Gables. We're gonna see how it is, and I will keep you updated as I read. I'm gonna tell you all the little things. So if you don't want spoilers, you probably shouldn't watch this video. But maybe you should, because I'm gonna tell you the truth about this book. Okay, we need to talk. What do we need to talk about, you might be asking? Books. Yes, the books I've been reading. Specifically Marilla. Alright, so there's a couple things I don't like about this book. The first, there was a really weird kiss scene where it was just a little gross. Like, I was like, ick. It's okay. I just wanted you to know about that. Also, there's a couple plot points that annoy me. Not like too much, but a little. The first is that Matthew has a girlfriend, like Matthew Cuthbert, the guy who like can't talk to women. Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't hate it, but knowing who Matthew is, it seems a little out of character. I don't know, for him to be like making moves on a girl. Another thing I don't love is Marilla and Rachel's relationship. Because I get this impression from reading Anne of Green Gables that Marilla and Rachel became friends because they lived next door to each other, not because they just were such besties. And this book essentially has some childhood friends, which I don't think is bad, but it makes the dynamic seem like it would be different in the Anne books. I don't think there'd be as much tension between the two if they had been childhood best friends. Also, some things that they do are just too Anne and Diana for me. Like, some of the things Rachel says, I'm like, Mrs. Linda would never say that. Too, like, imaginative. And yeah, you could say, like, she got old, so she doesn't have this imagination anymore. But sometimes I'm like, would she say that? I don't know. Another thing that makes me mad about this book is minor, but like I really ship Marilla and John Blythe. Of course I do. And that makes me so mad because I know I'm probably not gonna be satisfied with how the book ends, but like of course they have to not end up together, because if they didn't end up together, the Anne books wouldn't end the way they did. And obviously this author can't change what happened in the actual Anne books, but I know I'm gonna be upset. I know it's gonna annoy me. Also, I feel like there's a few like historical inaccuracies pertaining to like their relationship. This is set in the 1830s, by the way. I really don't think they would ever be in a situation where they could kiss. I just don't feel like that would actually have happened in the 1830s based on what we know about dating and relationship culture. When you read books that are actually from this time period, they wouldn't do that. books like Little Women, there was kissing in it, and that was considered like shocking. And it was saying how Jo was so impulsive that she kissed Professor Bear. You don't see that in like Jane Austen. So I feel like in this context, with who Marilla is, with their Presbyterian background, it just doesn't seem to fit. And I think this happens a lot in historical romances. I don't think it's just this book. I think it's historical romances. We write the romance as contemporary and the rest of the story is historical. And I don't like that. I think it needs to change. But that being said, this book is still really fun. It is good. It's sad. It's happy. And I'm really enjoying it. But I actually haven't read it today yet. I'm going to. Because I've been absolutely sucked into my audiobook that I told you about yesterday. Normally, I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks. I listen to maybe like 5 a year. Normally they're books I can't physically get without buying them. I don't like to buy books unless I know I'm gonna want to read it again and again and again, and something I want on my shelf. So with the Wonderland Trials, which is the audiobook, I've actually been like doing it really slow because it's hard for me to find time to listen to it when I'm not like listening to the Bible, listening to music, whatever. But now I'm in like the last few chapters and I was just sucked in. Like last night I was listening to it, and today. This book is incredible. I love other books by people in the same author circle, like Nadine Brandes and Kara Swanson. And Sarah Ella, her books always like scared me a little bit because they seem darker. But the Wonderland Trials just appealed to my everything. Oxford, tea, Alice in Wonderland, sweetest romance. Like, this book is amazing. It's exciting, but it's not too exciting. Like, that's gonna haunt you. So I'm really enjoying it. I'm in like, I think I'm 95% away through, so I have like 2 or 3 more chapters left. And I'm really loving it, and I think it's gonna be my first 5-star read of 2024. Actually, I already had a 5-star read. Oops. I think it might be my book of the month for January. That's what I'll say. I think it might be. It's incredible. So, that being said, I'm going to go do some reading. I'm going to read my school book, which I didn't talk about, but it's The Blackbird Girls by Anne Blankman. I'm gonna go do some reading of this because I have to finish it by Wednesday. I'm almost done, so it's not a problem. I'm going to read some of Marilla, and I also might read my either poetry or my essays that I'm reading. Okay, I have an update. It is about 8 o'clock, yes, and I finished Marilla of Gables. Like, I just finished it. This book was really good. I'm not like raving about it because it's not Anne, okay? Like, there's a difference between this and this. There just is inherently, and I'm always going to prefer this, but this was a 4-star read, I think. I mean, I'm gonna have to like ponder a little bit, but I think it's 3.5 or 4-star read. It was really good. It was enjoyable. It was definitely not as fun as an Ellen Montgomery book, but it had everything I wanted in that. From someone else writing it, I think it was really good. It stayed pretty true to the story. It didn't really change anything that would happen in Anne, so that was amazing. I really loved the characters. I loved the setting. It was definitely sadder and heavier in some ways than Montgomery's other work. Even her darker works like Real of Ingleside or Mistress Pat, books that have a heavier tone, it has a different feel, and I think that's because this author brought her own flavor to it. So yeah, I did really enjoy this book. I don't really know what else to say about it. I've kind of given you my review as I went. Yeah, obviously this is better. This is worlds better. If you haven't read Anne of Green Gables, you must. What are you doing with your life? You need to read this book. But if you are an Anne fan, if you have read Ellen Montgomery's entire body of work and you need something to read, I would recommend Marilla of Green Gables. It has me very curious now because there's another author who writes books about literary mothers, I'll say. Like, obviously Marilla isn't a mother, but she kind of fits that category. So this author wrote Marmee and Caroline. Marmee, of course, is about Marmee from Little Women, and Caroline is about Ma from Little House on the Prairie. So I'm kind of curious about those. Obviously, it's a different author. If it was the same author, I'd probably jump on it because she did a really good job with it. But it makes me curious to see what other stuff is out there. Also, one thing about this book that I thought was really cool, I don't know that the author's a Christian. She didn't mention it anything in her acknowledgements or dedication, which I read all the things. But there was a lot of scripture references, and like hit little comments that had to do with scripture, Bible stories, which I really appreciated. I think it fits the historical context, and I think often religion is left out of historical books, which is not the case in this book. Obviously, I feel like if it was Christian, it would have been deeper on the Christian morals, but it was mentioned, which I appreciate. So, with that being said, I finished a book. I'm probably not going to read another one today. That seems a bit excessive, but I might listen to my audiobook some, and I'm really close to finishing it. So, it's kind of insane, like, when you track your books, you realize, like, how many books you actually read in, like, a week or a month or a year. I'm already at, I think this is 12 books in the first month of this year. So that's kind of wild. I think 12 was my most from last year. Like the month I had most was 12 books. And I have like 3 more days of this month, and I think I'm gonna finish at least 2 more books. So yeah. Anyways, I will get back to you with more reading updates as they come. Okay, coming in with a reading life update. Last night I finished another book. It was the Little Women movie novelization, and I count rereads and I count movie novelizations as reads. I just finished the audiobook for Wonderland Trials. Oh my gosh, it was absolutely incredible. I'll get into it more a little later, but cliffhanger too. I did on a cliffhanger. I have to go read the second one. Honestly though, when there are sequels, even if there's a cliffhanger, I like to wait a little bit so I don't just blow all the good times in one go. But that's what's going on right now. Okay, I feel like I did not update you at all about my reading yesterday. I did make a little clip that said I finished the Wonderland Trials, but I want to tell you a little bit about the Wonderland Trials and how amazing it is and why you should read it. So the Wonderland Trials is a retelling, kind of Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. It's a young adult fantasy dystopian story. Essentially, England has been collapsed. It's not what it used to be. The queen in charge doesn't like people's special abilities, and a few years prior, someone discovered the Wonder Gene. So this is something that gives people this special power, no one really knows exactly what the Wonder Gene is, but it makes them different, and the queen doesn't like that. Alice has always been like intrigued by this, but she's normal. And she lives at Oxford. She's 16 years old, and Oxford has been turned into like this academy. So she's at Oxford, but then everything starts changing. She starts meeting people, and she finds out that she is part Wonder. So she heads to Wonderland to compete in the Wonderland Trials, which is like this big trial. And there's so much mystery behind it, and nobody knows for sure what's actually going on behind the scenes. And Alice and some of her friends are going to figure out what's happening because people keep disappearing during the trials, and they want to put a stop to that. So that's kind of what it's about. It's perfect if you like Alice in Wonderland. If you like books that are similar to Alice in Wonderland, you like whimsical fantasy. If you liked Dust by Kara Swanson, that's like a retelling of Peter Pan. Very similar kind of story. But this book is so lighthearted. Even though it's kind of intense, it doesn't it's not a hard book to read. It's not difficult. It doesn't deal with like difficult topics too much. It's cozy. I did not expect the book to be cozy. There's the sweetest romance subplot that I love. I love these 2 characters. They're amazing. The magic, the whole setting of Wonderland, everything about it. It's like if you took Alice in Wonderland, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, tossed it into Oxford, poured some tea in there and shook it up. That's probably what you get. So I would highly recommend the Wonderland Trials. Also, I am about to finish my school book, which is the Blackbird Girls. It's a middle grade historical fiction, so it's not like, oh, my school book. I do enjoy reading books like this. I do like this book. It is about the Chernobyl incident back in the 80s, about two girls living in the Soviet Union whose lives have been affected by this nuclear disaster. And it's also following another subplot, World War II there's like 3 point of views. A World War II character who it all like kind of ties together. One thing there's a big content warning I would say for this one, because it deals a lot with child abuse. And if that's something that would bother you, something you've been through, maybe don't read this book. It's handled very sensitively and very well, but I would say that is a trigger warning. I'm not bothered by it. I find the way it's portrayed and the way that it's showing this character that she can be loved even though people have abused her is very beautiful. But you might not feel that way, and that's totally okay. So yes, that's Blackbird Girls. I'm almost done. I think I have like 2 more chapters left. I'm almost done. Yeah, like 2 chapters and an author's note. Okay, I just finished The Blackbird Girls by Anne Blankman. It was amazing. I highly recommend it. I love reading about Chernobyl. It's such a fascinating disaster, and this book was so sensitive and touching, and a lot of it was about Jewish prejudice, which I think is a really hot topic right now. And also the author is Jewish, so I feel like so often we read like World War II books or Holocaust books or books that happen to be about Jewish characters are not written by someone who's Jewish, and I think that perspective just brings so much more depth to it. So I think I've officially finished pretty much all the books I'm going to finish in January of 2024. So far I've read 15 books. That's insane. That is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, I have a confession to make. I kept forgetting to film this reading vlog. I forgot for 3 whole days. The first day I was very consumed. I was working on my book. And the next day I felt horrible. I had a horrible headache, so I didn't want to film. And then yesterday I just forgot. So I've done reading. I literally started and finished a book and started another book in the whole time without updating a single bit. I'm so sorry. Content creation is no joke. It is difficult. Let's be honest. It really is challenging. But that being said, it is Sunday now. So it has been a week. And I want to tell you first about the book that I read and finished in that block of time where I wasn't filming. Also just how many books I finished in this time. I think it's really interesting to see how much you actually read in a length of time. So the book that I started and finished was middle grade. It's quite short, and it is The Fresh New Face of Griselda by Jennifer Torres. It's a book about Griselda, who her family has just gone through, they lost their house and financial difficulties. And Griselda is trying to just like cope with all the changes that are coming into her life. And she decides she's going to start selling lip gloss to girls at school in order to maybe help her dad come home, because she can win a prize and she wants to do that and make her family how they used to be. So this book was sweet. It was fun. It's like, see how many pages? It's like 200 something pages, but they're small and the words are like big and spread apart. So this was a fun read. It's probably like 3 or 4 stars. Not a book I would like remember and get really excited about, but it was a good book. So I finished that one. I also started Emma by Jane Austen. So a little story about me and Emma. I started Emma in 2022, which is the year I read Pride and Prejudice for the first time. And I was really, really excited to read Emma because I had friends who told me it was their favorite Jane Austen book. YouTubers I semi-trust said that it was their favorite Jane Austen book. And all around, I've really heard everyone saying that this is the best one. And I started it and I didn't like it. A lot of things just bothered me. I was at a stage where like I felt like I couldn't read hardly anything without getting, I don't know. It was crazy. And it kept bugging me that I hadn't finished Emma. I had friends who were reading Emma. Everyone's reading Emma all the time. And then last year I read Northanger Abbey and Persuasion, and I actually loved them. So I was like, well, maybe it's time to give Emma a shot. So I started Emma a couple days ago now. It's been the only book I've been reading, and it's a slow book because the way Jane Austen writes, it's not a quick young adult read, you know? But I have some thoughts and some opinions, and I'll share it with you. I won't get into all of it in this video because I won't be finishing this book in this video. But I think Emma is very different than Jane's other works, her earlier works. So the works that were published before Emma. So Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice. It's quite different than those books. There definitely is less focus on romantic love and more focus of Emma as a character. But in many ways, I really, really don't like Emma. She literally ruins multiple people's lives because of her matchmaking abilities. And on reading this, I really don't relate to Emma. And I know it's like kind of a weird, narrow-minded way of reading books to be like, I need to relate with this character. But at the same time, I feel like we all go into books saying, I want to relate to this character. I want to feel for her. Even if I don't not like her, I want to feel for her. And I don't really feel for her. She feels very full of herself and thinks that she's so great. And I mean, I know that part of the plot is her character development, and that's what differentiates this book from other Austen novels. But I don't know. And I know what happens. I know the plot. I know everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of what happens. As I read half of it, and I used to have this really bad habit of reading last pages of books before I finish them. So I do know what happens, but I'm always interested to see how it happens and the writing style and all that. So I am enjoying Emma. But is she the most relatable character? I really don't think so. It's a good book. I think it's a book you should read, and I think it is one of the best examples of Austen's work as a whole. I think it combines aspects of a lot of her books, and like it was kind of peak career. So I definitely think that's a reason in itself to read it. The language is hard. It's difficult. If you don't read many classics, it will be hard to read for you. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't read Jane Austen. I don't think you should not read books because you're afraid of the language being difficult. So this week I finished 5 books, which is not normal for me. Normally I read 2 books a week on average based on my numbers from last year. But this week I read a lot. I only read 2 whole books, like where I read the whole thing, but I finished 3 books. So just a quick little rundown of what books those were. I read Marilla of Green Gables, which is an adult historical romance. I finished Little Women the movie novelization, which is a middle grade movie novelization. Historical, kind of. I finished The Blackbird Girls, which is middle grade historical fiction. I finished The Fresh New Face of Griselda, which is middle grade contemporary. And I also finished, of course, The Wonderland Trials, which is young adult fantasy dystopian. I totally forgot to film an outro for this video, so I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm going to be coming with a new video very soon, and also let me know if you read any of the books that I read in the video. Bye!